everyone. Welcome to SPC TV. We're here at SharePoint Conference 2012. Very excited here with a distinguished panel, well-respected thought leaders in the SharePoint community. What we're going to talk about in this episode is how SharePoint blogging has evolved, but more importantly, how it's contributing to the greater community. So to get things going here, Heather, why don't you introduce yourself and tell everyone about your blog?
Good afternoon. My name is Heather Waterman, and my blog is heatherwaterman.com. I'm a director at Interactive Studio, and we're based out of Washington, D.C.
Andrew?
I'm Andrew Connell. I'm one of the owners of Critical Path Training. We do SharePoint education. I've got a blog at andrewconnell.com/blog, and on Twitter, I'm Andrew Connell.
Jeremy Thake, I SharePoint MVP, work for AvePoint as a chief architect. I write with nothing but SharePoint.com. My Twitter handle is jthake.
Hi, I'm Todd Clint. My blog is ironically at toddclint.com. My Twitter handle also Todd Clint. I'm SharePoint MVP, and I do some SharePoint nerd stuff at Rackspace.
I'm Joel Olson, SharePointJoel.com. I'm a global SharePoint evangelist, kind of self-proclaimed, but I love to travel around the world and speak at SharePoint events and build communities. And I actually have a travel blog as well, travelingepic.com.
And my name is Dux Raymond Tsai, managing partner of Innovative E. I blog at meetdux.com, and my Twitter handle is meetdux. So let's get this conversation started. One of the key things I want to learn and really understand is what got you all started with blogging, and what focus do you have from a perspective of blogging around SharePoint? Let's get started with Heather.
Great. I started blogging once I started running into issues with SharePoint, and I wanted to make sure that I could share how I overcame those issues so that other people who were doing branding as well could follow along and perhaps help them out.
And how has that been for you? How long have you been doing this?
I think about 3 years. I mean, I don't have a ton of posts on my blog, but I have some really relevant blog posts overcoming some of the frequent things that the walls that we hit in SharePoint.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So things that lessons learned, that kind of thing.
Lessons learned, how to
do's, don'ts,
yeah,
and specifically on branding.
Yes. All
Jeremy,
branding.
how about you?
I started in 2006, I think. It's a while ago now, and not as old school as Andrew and Todd and Joel, who've obviously been around for a lot longer than I have.
Back in their days, right?
Yeah, back in their days.
Blogged uphill.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We did on slates and chisels. That's right. I think the reality is that the reason I did it was because I was writing it anyway, whether it was a OneNote or a Word document, and it got to the point where I was Googling and binging and finding these guys' stuff, and I'm like, well, if these guys are helping me, maybe if I put my stuff up, I can help other people as well. And for me, it was kind of that you could feel that benefit, and it's great coming to a conference where that blog post saved me hours. Thank you so much for doing it.
Yep.
So there's that kickback as well, there's that reward as well.
So what do you write about primarily?
Originally, I started off in the development space, but I do a lot of stuff now on the cloud and the hybrid strategies.
Sure.
Mainly because my role's changed as I've gone through the SharePoint world.
Sure.
Yeah.
AC, when did you start?
Actually, I can remember it was September 2003. It's about the same time that I got into, or sometime September 2003. I was doing content management server, and not many people were doing content management server, and I'd find lots of questions, lots of problems in the news groups. I'd go in and help the news groups way back, old timer, like news groups, right?
Usenet, right?
Yeah.
Usenet, now BBS and everything. I'd jump on BBS and all that stuff. Yeah.
Dial up with your modem.
So we had to dial up. I had like gerbils running packets back and forth, punch cards. So I started blogging because I'd find people have the same kind of problems, similar to what Jeremy and Heather have said, and just trying to help them with other things and things that I'd come across, find a cool technique and that I thought was cool and post it out there, and then morphed into more in the SharePoint space. Focused mainly on the developer topics,
Right.
but then also a lot of the web content management stuff as well, just from my background with CMS.
Well, for one thing, I enjoy your blogs about comparing iPads and Kindles and Surface.
Well, there's funny stuff about it because I've gotten to, there's a time when I picked games, NFL games against the spread with a couple people. We just put our posts up on our blog, and that was a way that we would kind of go on the record with what we were going to post.
Right.
And then I spent a year working for the intelligence agency and found one of the intelligence agencies in the U.S. and found that we could never access my blog with some of the stuff that was on there because I was flagged as a gambling site. So then my site was whitelisted to get in. So now I know that I can say whatever I want to say because I've even been whitelisted with the government. Even if I say something that's off color, I can get it right
There
off through
you
because
go.
it's been whitelisted.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Todd, what about you?
I don't remember exactly when I started, probably 2005, 2006, something like that. Honestly, my blog started because I was coming to a conference like this. My company had to pay for it. My boss is like, if we're going to spend all this money for you to go to this conference, we want to hear what you've got to say. So take notes and share it with the coworkers. So I did that, blog kind of the sessions that I went to. And then I found that was a really great way for me to keep notes for myself.
Sure.
So it just happens that it's handy for the rest of you.
Yeah.
But I got tired of trying to fight the same problem over and over again. Not real smart, not a great memory. So I just started blogging the things that I kept tripping over, and then turns out other people tripped over them too.
I'm
Or
gonna
you
echo
go
that.
on Bing
Yeah.
and you searching for a problem,
Same
and then it refers to your own blog article.
awesome.
That's right.
Yeah.
Those are the funny ones, yeah. It was always my personal technology journal or something.
Yeah.
I would
Right.
write this stuff down. I was like, how do I do this? And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I answered a comment on my blog. It actually
Yeah.
said
There you
that I
go.
did that.
Because you have to go back and find it all the time and see
Yeah.
what you did to fix it. So that's, one of the reasons why we blog.
Well, Todd, you kind of took it further, right? I mean, I suspect because of the blog, it evolved to your weekly show. Can you tell everyone about your netcast?
Oh yeah, so I did the blog stuff and people liked it, which it tells you how early my blog started because there's far better blogs than mine out there. So if anybody's reading mine, you can tell how little content there was. But then I was consuming other things, watching netcasts and stuff on or podcasts, whatever. And I'm like, I could do that. That sounds like fun because writing up blogs is a lot of work.
Oh.
But just sitting there talking about it is way less work. So I'm like, instead of writing all these blogs up, I could just talk about it and record it. So I started on Mondays doing a netcast. I've done 135 of them now. I'm coming up on 4 years of doing it. And so I just kind of talk about all the things that I've done wrong in the last week, all the problems that I've, and
It's like a reality show, right?
it's a sad thing.
Confessions or
His
something.
wife's walking backwards and forth in the
Yep.
discussion.
And it's been,
Talking to himself.
Yeah.
it's been pretty fun. And I got a chat room. I do it live and I record it, so people correct me when I say the wrong stuff. And it's been a good community. I get several thousand hits per netcast,
Sure.
so
Right.
it's been a good time. But that absolutely is an extension of the blog. It's kind of to augment the information in the blog.
Well, I agree with you about writing, though. I mean, it takes, if you want to put out good quality content, it takes a lot to write. I mean,
Yeah.
grab screenshots. So for me, I like recording stuff. So whenever I do presentations, I record it. It's a blog post.
Yeah.
And a lot of people find value
And
in that.
the format that Todd does is great. I mean, I used to watch that when I was in Australia, even with the time difference. So I'd be at work during the daytime, and Todd would be playing on the screen. Who's that?
Who is that handsome devil?
But it was great to kind of have that kind of the stories. But a bit like the SharePoint Pod show is different. I mean, we've had pretty much everyone on here in that show, but rather than Todd talking about himself for an hour, we ask other people what their problems are. And so that's also interesting as well because it adds a little bit of humor. But I must admit, he is a characteral guy, so it's always quite fun to watch him on that.
So Joel, you have one of the most high traffic SharePoint blogs, right? And I'm sure a lot of people know Joel. So can you share an interesting experience or feedback you've gotten from the community if anybody has benefited from stuff you've written about?
Let me tell you that's kind of unique. Something I've been able to leverage with my blog that might be somewhat unique. And you probably have experienced this a little bit. When I first was leaving Microsoft, I used it as kind of a feedback mechanism. I started blogging much like these guys to try and keep track of what was going on, and I would get questions from the field at Microsoft when I was in IT asking me things. And rather than responding in an email, I was like, and then I get the same question from someone else.
Sure.
I could just put my response in a blog and then just send a link. Much easier than trying to write that post over and over again or save it somewhere in a document. But the part that I think is kind of unique is since I love travel and I love speaking at kind of international conferences, I've been able to leverage it to say, who's in Armenia that's doing SharePoint? And be able to get contacts and be able to put together a community event and actually help build community in communities where they don't exist.
Right.
As an example, when I was leaving, I posted, hey, should I go to the pyramids? Should I go to Petra? Or should I go to Jerusalem? When I was going to speak in Dubai. And just a quick reference, this guy in Jordan said, if you come to Petra, you can come speak at our user group. And that was really kind of what kicked things off, was a response to a blog post that was kind of I thought it would be more of a travel thing that, oh, this one's better than that one.
Right.
Where it really turned more into a community thing and a feedback mechanism where somebody else from Israel said, well, if you come to Israel, I'll take you to Jerusalem, and you can speak at our user group in Israel. And so it allowed me to reach out to new people and new audiences
Right.
that I could then connect with them and have new readers, and it's that engagement of the kind of global community that I've been really kind of seeking.
Well, I want to throw back to Jeremy. Speaking of feedback engagement, you mentioned earlier about somebody walking up to you like, "Oh, your blog saved my life," all that good stuff. And can you have a specific scenario or situation that happened?
Yeah,
Or
it
you
was
just made that
actually
up?
something no, completely made up. No, thanks for putting me in the spot, Dux. Actually, no, there was one. So there's a particular nuance with full trust solutions when you're developing and when you deploy and you use the upgrade commands. And in the TechNet documentation, they hadn't got around to tweaking it so it wasn't correct. And so
that
this,
doesn't ever happen.
No.
so
made up.
they were putting in the PowerShell commands, and obviously it wasn't doing anything properly, and screaming, and not getting the error messages. And so they were Googling and binging away and discovered my blog article which said, actually, there's a typo in the PowerShell command. If you use this part, then it'll obviously update properly and push that change straight through.
Right.
So I love all the work that the guys at TechNet and MSDN done, and if they're watching, they've done a great job this time around. This conference 3 years ago, no one knew anything. This time everyone's come educated about 2013. So I think as a blogger now, it's made it more challenging because we could write about stuff in the 2010 release and everyone was like, wow, these guys are writing really good content, whereas now we're competing against this amazing amount of information this time around. So we've got to work out ways to complement that in different ways this way for sure.
Well, talking about that, how do you guys think about writing? Well, first of all, how do you decide what you want to write on? And number two, talking about integrity of the content, right? So for example, especially if content doesn't exist, do you double, triple check what you write if it's legit, or how do you go through that process, Heather?
Absolutely. When I put together a blog post, I go back and double check to make sure I'm still having this error and make sure, how I'm getting the error and how I corrected it, and also making sure my code is right so that, when they do read the blog post or take some of the code, they're not coming back. And, occasionally it happens where you have a little typo in something, but yeah, I do double check everything.
You see?
So I actually had a pretty concrete example of something like this happen where SharePoint 2007, there were two things that I was struggling with at the time that I found no information about anywhere. And when SharePoint 2007 came out, there was a bit of a lack in terms of the developer content on MSDN and the SDK and stuff. They ramped it up really quick, but right when it came out, it wasn't there. So I was having trouble with setting up a site for with dual authentication, two different web apps coming in, one with authenticated, one with FBA and anonymous. I beat my head against a wall like crazy trying to figure that out. Finally, I got it figured out. I finally went down and said, I got to write about this because I'm going to have to do it again.
Sure.
I wrote about the whole thing. I've since had to shut the comments off on that one post because it got up to like 300 or 400 and the page wouldn't load anymore. So I had to then go through and start shutting down some of the comments. Because it's all it's I guess a flaw of the blog engine. I asked me, so we never thought about paging for comments. I didn't either. It's still one of the biggest posts that I have, but then I had another one where I was working on a timer job. And there was nothing out about doing a timer job. So I wrote up how to do the timer job the whole way. I'm your classic developer, run everything as administrator. And I had some people coming back saying, it's not working for me. It's not working for me. I'm kind of looking at it like, can't figure this out. And someone says, oh, I just had to go in and set this one user, give him DBO access on a content database. I'm like, while that's probably what I would do too, Todd would probably kill me for doing this. So let me try and figure out what's going on. Figured out what I had done wrong. Went back and had another post that came in and said, mea culpa, here's what I said to do. Here's what you really should be doing. Don't do what everybody else is telling you to do because it's a bad fix. Here's how you fix it. And then had a third one to kind of say, here's how you fix the whole thing. That actually, those two posts are what got me into writing for MSDN. Because MSDN came to me and said, well, we're missing a bunch of content. What do you think? I'm like, these two posts are the most popular posts. You don't have anything. Now there's two white papers on MSDN showing you how to do those kinds of things. And it just kind of led to doing me writing a lot more for MSDN of content that I kind of tested out for my blog.
Sure.
And it's nice because a blog is much more of an informal kind of a thing. So while it is your record, I mean, you put something out there, you want to make sure that it's not just thrown together because it is going to be your name, but you want to make sure that it's good enough to actually kind of go back and write about, but it's like, I didn't have to proof this as much, and yeah, there's a few typos, my English isn't great, I don't really care, but it's something that people are going to look at and say, I'm going to get the value out of this, I need to get the value out of, and then you can polish it for a real article.
And that's the beauty of a blog. People's expectation is not like, ooh, it's a white paper or it's a research type of paper.
I think also it judges. Sorry, John. It judges you. Like if you have got typos or spelling mistakes and capitalization, you know, like if it's not properly formatted, I think immediately the quality assumption goes down. So that would be my feedback for people who are blogging is that do spend that extra little bit of time polishing the structure, make it easy to read, because it does give that impact of.
Mental note.
Write that down.
It does give that initial impact of quality and whether this is a trusted source or not.
Feedback taken. Thank you.
Well, one of the things.
He's actually a good example of a good way to structure it.
One of the things I was going to say is whenever I'm doing a kind of technical one of the things I'll try and do is say, here's some related sources of things I may have referenced or read when I was putting this together, because I'm not the authority on this topic, but I'm trying to piece together a few different things of what I've learned. And by the way, here's more. And I think that's important for people to understand that I had one guy come up to me once and he says, your blog is my SharePoint Bible. And that's a lot of pressure. And you guys can laugh, it's okay. Because that's too much to take on to say, you know, start critiquing it to that level and to have that kind of pressure. You know, I don't need this to be your Bible. Because honestly, and this may take you to the next topic, but honestly what I've found in blogging is I blog about what's on my mind, I blog about what I'm doing, I blog about what I'm thinking about. I'm not blogging for someone and trying to write a SharePoint Bible. I'm not trying to write an admin guide.
Right.
Yeah, it's not like blog versus
it's a
blog
reflection
versus
of
book.
what's on my mind.
Yeah, and that's
If you like it, read it. If you don't subscribe.
Right.
That's right. Don't try and tell me what I should blog about. I'll ask you if I'm looking for ideas, but otherwise it's whatever I'm doing.
Well, Todd, have you encountered issues around plagiarism?
I have. So this is one of my
It's like
favorite.
curveball, right?
This is one of my favorite stories. So with SharePoint 2010, we got this idea of throttling, and there's a lot of real kinks around throttling. Lists and libraries throttle differently, and so I was getting questions about it from people. Well, in order to see how throttling works, you need a list or library that has enough items to be throttled. So for lists, the default throttling starts at 5,000 items. So I had a blog post on throttling, and then I had some PowerShell that created a list with 5,001 items so you could see it. I created the list, and every entry in the list said, Todd is cool. So I created a list and then created 5,001 items that said, Todd is cool. It was really great. I mean, I do that kind of goofball stuff on my blog all the time. So then I was looking around for some other stuff and found a result on something, and somebody plagiarized that blog post and left the Todd is cool part in. So there's some guy who has a blog post showing people how to create a list that says Todd is cool 5,001 times.
You know, that's happened to me too, and the fun part with that, I love messing with those people. That's something that gets really under your skin. When you take time to actually write something, and then someone takes your content,
Copy, paste.
repurposes it, and doesn't give you any kind of credit, or they'll say they're just trying to get like a money grab from like Google AdSense or
Exactly.
something. But like I had somebody do that to me as well, where they went through and they did it, and I knew this was going to be a post that someone was going to take. So I started taking the code that I would have and just do pictures of code instead of actually code you could select, because the formatting is such a pain in HTML. So I did that. I saw somebody steal the blog post. I went to my post and I used a different image, and then I put some really vulgar image on his that replaced
He referenced that same
and
image.
he went through and rested. I looked at his blog post and I'm like, oh, that's a hell of a code sample you got.
Your mom read your blog?
The guy left it there for like 6 months. It was hilarious.
I think the added bit there is that you can reference other people's stuff, but don't just grab the entire post and
Copy
chuck
and
it in
paste
yours. And
own it.
abstract with a reference to a link and give them credit and say, Todd's cool, this is this part, and I'm adding
Here's
this
a
much
list that
value.
explains why.
Here's what I think about Todd's post.
For the record, the vulgar piece was it was all like Xcode for like an iPad app. So that was like, this has nothing to do with SharePoint. That's what was vulgar about it.
Right. Heather, you were going to say something about plagiarism and
No, I was just going to say, making sure that you credit someone. You know, if I find something that's worked for me, I put it on my blog and I make sure I credit and say, hey, I had this issue and I went out and I found this blog post and, this helped me.
I think the other one about credit as well is we've been around the community for a while now, and you know the go-to guys, right?
Exactly.
So if I'm talking about IT Pro stuff, I know to go speak to Todd after I've gone and spoke to actually. I'm joking, I go to Todd first. And other who are new to the community won't know that they can go to Andrew for dev stuff and come to me for dev stuff, and design stuff goes straight to Heather's. So what I tend to do is I'll always shout out at the bottom of my post, here are the other blogs you should check if you're interested in these areas.
Right.
And it helps new people to get an idea about the coverage of the ecosystem, because we're all specialists in particular areas, right? It's not like we can know everything about SharePoint.
I barely know anything about the part I know something about. So.
So talking about new people, I mean, this is a great opportunity to share to everyone. If they want to get started on blogging, if just one tip from every one of you, what would that be?
Well, so I kind of want to start. I meant to mention that at the beginning. So I started my blog as a note to me. I never sat out and thought, I wonder what I can provide to the community. Oh, nobody wants to know what I want to know. That's absolutely the wrong idea, because the standard will be set so high you won't be able to do it.
Yeah.
So if you're doing something, blog it and start blogging it, because somebody's going to make the same mistake. I mean, there's how many billion people on the planet? Somebody's going to make the same mistake you are. Get it out there. Get the conversation started. Don't worry about trying to fill a niche or anything. Get out there, start typing. The more you do it, the easier it'll be. So that's just do it.
Let me take a different tact a little bit, and I think it's the angle thing. It's like, if people are all covering the same thing, that's one of the things that bugs me actually about blogs. And
SharePoint design is free.
Right.
Yeah.
The most popular tweet ever.
I just blocked that.
And what I'm saying is, if it's something you've learned, love it. Keep it going. That's the stuff that rocks. If it's, I'm writing a blog post that's SharePoint installation, even though I'm installing it for the 10th time, not useful.
Yeah.
There are a ton of
I just published one of those.
Yeah, you have that.
But yours
post.
is already.
No, do I? Thanks, Joel.
He has a white paper on that,
But you
which is
probably-
awesome.
What you probably did when you did the blog post, Todd, though, is you probably said, and here's why.
I might
Right?
have. You broke my heart, Joel.
There you go.
It's not just here's the steps, it's the here's why. And
Yeah.
that's
a lot of commentary, and
Yeah.
bad jokes. And,
Heather, any tips?
You blog for yourself, and the blog post doesn't have to be real intricate. It can be really simple, just simple things that help everybody out.
Right.
So, and just do it for you.
So I agree with what everybody said. Make it your personal journal. Write the stuff that's important to you. What's out there. Let the search engines pick it up. They're going to find it. But I know some people are going to say, well, how do I get it? How do I get little visibility? How do I get people to see it? I mean, don't go reach out to some people and say, hey, would you blog about my blog? Would you post something about it? Like,
Yeah.
it's like,
Earn it.
look at that piece of sand over there. I mean, it doesn't relate to people. They don't really understand what you're saying. So what you want to participate in a conversation, and do that in for developer stuff. Go to Stack Overflow. You find other problems people are having.
Point to it.
Don't go.
Yep.
Well, don't go see somebody's having a problem. Go write a blog post and then go over to Stack Overflow and say, here's the URL. Go look at it over here. Help them out.
Yeah.
But in your signature, you've got your URL. You can say, I'm referencing. Here's a big post, but you want the answer? Here's the answer.
More stuff.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
reasoning
Right,
behind it over
right.
here.
Absolutely.
Go comment on other people's blogs. Have your URL in the comment or something that actually is not in the comment, but as your profile, to where people are seeing that you're providing value. You're not just trying to go grab attention, but if they see that, the engines will find you better because they're going to see links, cross links going to the different content. Other people will find it. Eventually, somebody's going to have a great blog post. An email's going to go flying around. Next thing you know, your traffic's going to spike.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
Google AdSense, you can go buy a Coke by the end of the week.
There you go.
And the other thing that has been mentioned is the whole social media around blogging.
Absolutely.
You're not just blogging in a vacuum.
It's
Yeah.
and.
You've got people that you're engaging with. If you're part of the community, even some small piece,
Yeah.
somebody.
Have those social
Have a
buttons.
conversation.
Yeah.
Encourage people to retweet
Share,
your article.
yeah.
I think my one would be that we've talked a lot about blogging as a way of helping people when you've had a problem. My advice would be more around if you're having conversations which are happening all week, right, in the bars, late at night. Some
Here
of
at a
those
conference.
conversations are gold.
Yeah.
Have a mental note and write those up, because the opinion pieces where people have been bouncing ideas off each other also help people. It's not just the technical how-to, it's the opinion pieces that people like as well.
Later though at night with the blog in the bar, so those are the quality. It goes way down. I think it's important too that when you start a blog, make sure you've got something that identifies with you. I'm a big proponent of having your name in the blog, because otherwise people are going to look at it and say, you meet somebody at a conference and they're like, yeah, I'm this person. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, nice to meet you. You having a little conversation, and then you finally find out it's like, oh yeah, my blog is and you're like, oh, I love your
Yeah.
stuff.
Update your
That's great stuff.
profile photo as well. Don't use one
Yeah.
from when you were like 15 and you weren't
That's right.
overweight from being in New York and eating too many burgers. Have the one from yesterday when you're at the conference, so that people recognize you at these things.
Yeah, I think make it recognizable.
Now, last question. I mean, great conversation, great points. My last question is, any unexpected benefits that you've gotten for writing blogs? I mean, it just threw a curveball that was a good thing.
That we can say on camera.
I got a good
As long
one.
as it's legal.
In which state?
I actually got headhunted by AvePoint and relocated from Western Australia to New York. So that was probably one of my best benefits, is the visibility of my blog the CEO, TJ, reached out to me and asked me where I wanted to work with AvePoint. So for me, that was a really good benefit.
And I would add right on that my career, there's a direct correlation to when I started blogging, and the visibility that I've gotten really was based on the foundation of what was built through the blog.
We can keep going.
Yeah.
That's all right. We're special.
Yeah.
I think for me, it was. I think one of the big things for me is the big benefits is that your content. It's like a resume. I don't feel like whenever I go into when I started working with customers and stuff, I didn't have to worry about diving in.
Okay, start over.
Or ask me again. I got cut off. I want to finish.
Let's start over. Start over.
That's good because I was rambling.
Unexpected benefit. It's a direct correlation.
So one benefit I've gotten from blogging as well is that there's been a direct correlation between my career and when I started my blog. I was in IT doing operations, engineering, architect kind of stuff, but it was actually the visibility that started carrying me to bigger conferences and connecting with people. It's that building that network that then allowed me to travel more, which was a big goal of mine.
Sure.
And since then, just kind of making it short, I've been able to travel over 120 countries. So it's been a big passion, and it's carried me a little bit. But I think it's awesome. Capability. I'm trying to share so other people can benefit.
So you're saying if they blog, they could travel as much, right?
If they're big bloggers, if they're really dedicated and they have a lot of passion, there's nothing they can't do as well.
AC?
So as an individual, as someone who's worked for a big company, as someone who's been independent, who owns a company, who's a small business owner, one of the nicest things about it for me personally and for other people is that if I go talk to somebody and I find out, do you have a blog? Yes, do you have a blog? Okay, I can go look at the content you've been doing. If I'm interviewing somebody for a job, the first thing I want to know is, what have you done? What projects have you been on? What have you implemented? They've now got, for me, I have an identity with my blog, whether, if I'm with my company, if something happens in my company, if things get, whatever happens down the road, I've now got almost a 10-year kind of history of, you can see, like, look, that's my work there. You can see my work. You can see the stuff I put out there is quality stuff. And or at least I think it's quality stuff. And it gives people some sort of like a validation of like who you're going to work with.
Sure.
For a while when I was independent, I never really had to give a resume. I never really had to do anything. They just kind of said, oh, we know who you are. It's okay. We recognize you from the stuff you're doing. And it's not about a name kind of me thing. If you're going into a job, you give them a resume with a list of here's all the projects I've been on. They're going to go look for references and stuff.
Absolutely.
That is my reference. It saves time for them.
Yeah.
So.
Unexpected benefit?
Being interviewed by you, Dux. Being up here on the panel and getting to.
Mine. That was mine.
So I think, it's all about the visibility thing. I grew up in a small town in Iowa. It never occurred to me.
Where's Iowa?
Sounds like a story.
It's still a state. I think we should
Something
check
about
that.
elections.
Yeah. But it's crazy to me. Even walking around here that I can come from these humble beginnings, but the internet is a great, a democratizer, and so I can go out and I've gone to different places. It is now.
He just made that up.
But I go on vacation and I'll be talking to people on my blog. I'm like, hey, does anybody live? I'm going out to New York, and a bunch of people on my blog are like, hey, let's go have dinner, and it's just crazy the way that it's the visibility.
Absolutely.
And being able to literally hang out with people like you guys.
Yeah.
And
Those humble beginnings humble part was so long ago, wasn't
yeah,
it?
that was a long way from here.
Well,
to the
I
humble
tell you, at
part.
least for me, I've done a lot of business from it. And
Yeah.
It wasn't
Yeah.
expected at all. And I remember one time it was Christmas, and I made up, I was opening my gift, but I wrote up this whole article on governance and Santa Claus. It was all serious, but fictitious companies for Santa Claus. And then a week later, somebody says, "So it looks like you actually do this stuff." I go, "Yeah." So not be
Santa's
Santa
mad.
Claus, but help.
You need some drive or some passion behind it for sure. And I
Yeah.
think for the people who go, oh, I do it for the love of the game and there's no incentive there, I think they're lying to themselves a bit. There is always something that you're going to benefit from.
Yeah.
Sure. Heather, any thoughts?
Todd took mine.
You can say it again, though.
Being asked to be up here with all these guys.
Wonderful.
So,
Well,
it's awesome.
folks, thank you for this opportunity to talk about blogging and sharing your thoughts with the community. And again, thank you everyone for watching another episode of SPC TV here at SharePoint Conference 2012. Keep connected, continue engaging with the community with the hashtag SharePoint, be on SPM, sign up on Twitter. Other than that, thank you and enjoy the other episodes that's about to come. Have a great day.